Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back to the garden. Today we are out in the hoop house and we're going to be doing something a little bit different, something that I don't really know much about. We are going to be pinching flowers. Now I get a lot of questions on just individual growing videos. It's just like, do you pinch flowers? Should I pinch flowers? Why pinch flowers? And in general, the answer I have is it's up to you. A lot of this just depends on your personal preference. I have very little experience in pinching flowers. That's something that I'm going to definitely work on this year because I want to pinch things and see how they respond and see if it's a good idea. In general, if you don't know what pinching is, pinching just basically refers to snipping the plant so that it produces a bushier growth. A lot of times, you can snip it and it'll make more flowers. It just depends on what you're snipping and how you're snipping it. In general, I think there are just kind of two schools of thought in snipping. There's like a soft pinch where you just snip off the, growing tip. And then there's a harder pinch where you remove more of the plant. Again, I am learning with you guys on this one. So today we're going to be going through the greenhouse and kind of thinking about what things we can maybe pinch and what things we can't. First up are my sweet peas. These are the Lathyrus odoratus or whatever, the ornamental sweet peas, not peas, These are plants that I am definitely going to pinch. You can see my sweet pea seedlings are pretty large already. I planted these back in the fall. They've been overwintering in the hoop house. I am just going to pinch these back about 2 inches, just removing about 2 sets of true leaves. I want to leave, most of the plant here. And we're going to encourage these sweet pea plants to start branching, which is going to be really exciting. You can see they're not nearly tall enough to reach my trellis netting yet. I do need to run some twine across there so that they can climb up to that trellis netting instead of laying all over the ground where they might get stepped on. That's definitely a garden task I need to do. In general, I like to pinch the sweet peas when they're about 6 to 8 inches tall. I think they're about that right now. I know for a fact that will produce a bushier, healthier plant. In fact, I think pinching sweet peas is an absolute necessity when it comes to growing them. At least for cut flowers. I don't know about exhibition sweet peas or anything like that. I'm not an expert in that, so I can't speak for that. But for cut flowers, I'm definitely going to pinch these. Moving on, looking around the greenhouse, what else we might be able to pinch? We have some Bupleurum. I've never pinched Bupleurum before, but for the sake of this video, I am just going to remove about half of this plant and see how that responds to a pinching. Hopefully the Bupleurum will produce some nice bushy growth in response to this. I should also mention, if you have any experience with any of these plants, pinching these plants, be sure to post it down in the comments below. I love learning from you guys. Any information would be great. I really appreciate it. Looking around, I'm going to do some pinching on the Agrostemma plants. Now, you'll notice these Agrostemma are getting nice and tall. Agrostemma, in general, will produce multiple flowers as they bloom. I'm not sure how they're going to branch here, if they even will. I've never done this before. But in general, if you don't want to worry about waiting, you can just go ahead and let it grow naturally and it will produce multiple flowers. So there's no need to really worry about it. Moving on to the bachelor's buttons, I'm just going to go ahead and pinch half of these. These plants are really tall already. I'm not really sure you would even consider this pinching since these plants are so tall. Again, bachelor's buttons, another branching plant that will naturally begin to branch regardless of if you pinch them or not. So, in general, plants that have been pinched will take longer to bloom. In general, it takes about maybe 2 or 3 weeks longer for those plants to bloom. So maybe pinching is an option for you if you want to stagger your planting a little bit. If you want to get a prolonged bloom period, you can maybe pinch half of them, let half of them do their thing. It really just depends on you and what you want to do in your garden. This whole thing is just very much an experiment and a process for me of trial and error and figuring out what works and what to do and what not to do. So hopefully this video will be somehow helpful. I'm not quite sure if it will be, but we'll see. Moving on, taking a quick look around at the hoop house. I've never pinched Sweet William before, my dianthus. I'm going to pinch a couple of those. I'm just going to lightly trim those and see what happens and see if they'll start branching out. One last plant that I want to pinch in the hoop house are my Snapdragons. I'm going to pinch about half of my Snapdragons and see what that does. I know you can pinch Snapdragons. My spacing is pretty close here, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to come into play, but I know you can pinch Snapdragons to get more blooms, albeit I think they might be smaller blooms, but we'll see. I'm going to leave half unpinched for the sake of comparison. Last but not least, in stuff that I am growing this year, I am also going to pinch the larkspur outside of the hoop house when they get big enough. Right now, the larkspur that are unprotected outside of the hoop house are still very much in the dormancy kind of seedling phase of their growth cycle. I know this because they're still very low to the ground, staying just really close to the ground where it's nice and warm. But once they break out of this kind of seedling stage, we'll see that these plants will elongate and get taller and get much more open with their foliage. And when that happens, I'm going to take my garden snips and I'm going to go through and I am going to pinch half of the larkspur seedlings as well. And we're going to see how those do, you know, what the difference is, and really just if it's worth it to pinch the larkspur or not. And I'm really just interested to see the results of whether or not this pinching is actually going to give us more flowers. There was one more plant in the hoop house that could have been pinched, but I'm not going to, and I'll explain why. There are stalks in the hoop house, and this is me talking from complete inexperience here, so feel free to offer any information in the comments below. I believe there are several types of scented stalk. Some types are reblooming, and some types only have one central flower stalk. Like for example, I think Quartet is a type that you can pinch and it will give you multiple stalks of flowers. Don't quote me on that. I'm not certain. You'll have to do your own research. However, I planted the Cats variety in my hoop house this year, and I believe that's a variety with only one central stalk. So I think if I cut those to pinch them, I am just by default getting rid of my only flower stalk. So I'm not touching those. Not even going to touch those. Again, it just comes down to what you're growing. You got to really research and know what you're growing, whether or not it's going to be acceptable to pinch these or not. I know it's kind of silly, but the whole process is just basically learning about the characteristics of your plants and what your plants need. And I think that's really the only thing that separates, you know, a good garden from a great garden, is just really familiarizing yourself with what is actually growing in your yard. That's really about it for this video. I hope it was somehow helpful. I'm not quite sure if it was, honestly, because when it comes to pinching, I am very much learning right along with you guys. As always, any questions or comments down below, love to hear from you. Try to check those within the week. If you're new to the channel, this is your first video, you liked it, go ahead and hit subscribe. Would love to have you. We grow all kinds of cut flowers here and vegetables, and sometimes we do random DIY projects. It really just depends. So if you like a surprise, you might like this channel. Hit that little bell icon. It'll tell you whenever I make new videos. Trying to put them out pretty consistently. Lots of winter sowing and stuff going on right now, getting ready for spring for the garden. That's about it. I hope you guys are having such an amazing day. I'll talk to you all later. Bye, guys.